A prideful situation. We have an instigator, the prince of darkness. And we see a charge given. Pharaoh charged all his people. Can you imagine being a baker, being a teacher of that time, being a librarian of that time? Yes, they had librarians. They had the same type of jobs and did the same types of things we have today. Imagine being a common person and the king coming to you saying, you see a small little Hebrew child, take that child, throw him in the Nile River. Pharaoh being used by Satan himself to charge his people, to give orders to his people, to give directions. When these people knew, and certainly would know in a mighty way, as we have the battle then coming up between God and Pharaoh as he sends the plagues and all of that. But these people, these Egyptians, they knew God was God. They knew who the God was. It was the God of the Hebrews. And yet we see, rather than listening to the God of the Hebrews, they choose their own God. Pharaoh, a type of Satan. 2 Corinthians 4:4, Paul writes, in whom the God of this world. Now that is often misunderstood. The God of this world is not God Jehovah. It's not Jesus Christ. The God of this world is Satan. He's in charge of this corrupt place, this fallen place, our sinful nature, this sinful world, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. And may I submit to you today, we may not have a Pharaoh running around throwing Hebrew children into some dark, dank, dirty Nile River, but we do have unbelievers, believers in self, believers that any good is going to come from man, and we have them degrading God's words, degrading God's people, doing ungodly things. They've been given a charge, and that charge is coming from Satan. Beloved, what am I saying? I'm saying we need to recognize this for what it is, ungodliness, and we need to understand that it's not the people themselves who are behind this, but it is Satan. And so we need to put on that armor of God. We need to be ready to fight, and we need to be ready to defend. So after we see the charge, then we come to the river itself, this river of death. And the command was, every son that is born, he shall cast into the river. The Nile River. River is usually used in the Bible as a symbol for refreshing. It's used sometimes as a symbol for the Holy Spirit. More times than not, the water and the river of the water, the washing of the water is all good. But in this case, it's not to be. In this case, it's vile. It's corrupt and it's rotten. The Nile River, used of Satan himself. Ephesians 1:5, having predestinated us into the adoption of children. The adoption of children, that's a key thought. By Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. You and I, if we have turned to Christ, if we've heard the gospel and believed and understood the gospel, we've accepted that by faith, we've turned to him, we have been adopted into God's family. You and I are sons and daughters. Did you ever think of that? A son of Christ, a son of Christ, a son of God, a daughter of God. Put yourself here. Every son. S-O-N. You and I are sons, adopted into the family. And so we see his chosen people and the attack upon them. And as I place myself here, being adopted son, I see an attack on myself. I know it's coming. And I have to be on guard for that dark, dank river. When I was a young man, about 14 years old, my best friend, his name is Roger. I spent more time with him. We put a tent in his backyard frequently, and we'd sleep in that tent in his backyard. You know, we were camping out. We'd get up at first sunrise, we'd jump on our bikes, and we'd go riding around town, and we'd ride through the subdivisions, and don't listen to this, Paula, okay? But we'd ride past the houses of all the girls we liked, you know, to see if they were up yet. Were their lights on? Were they out? What were they doing? And we just did everything together. When we got to be in junior high and sophomore year, I believe it was, 14, 15 years old, he was not very talented, but he found that he could run, and so he joined the cross-country team. He thought maybe he could run cross-country. And he'd run down through the bottomlands, down in southern Indiana, where White River ran through. Let me tell you, folks, White River was not very white. My dad and my uncle, they had farmland, and I've seen that river come up as they have in the Midwest now many times. And even when the river is not up, the stumps, the potholes, the trash that's in that river. And I was warned many times because we had sandbars right adjacent to our land, and I'd go down and I'd fish overnight for catfish. I'd go down to the river, put me a tent up, and just spend the day at the river. And I was warned many, many times about the dangers of that river. But Roger had never been warned. And one day, while practicing for cross country, he'd been out running. He was hot and sweaty. And his path took him by that river. And as he looked at that river and as he looked at himself, he was hot and he needed some refreshment. And he looked, and though the river was dark and somewhat turbulent, it yet looked refreshing to him. And he thought, oh, but if I could just jump in that river and swim over to the other side, I see a sandbar over on the other side, and I'll lay there for a little while and cool down and then swim back over. Well, you know what happened. Being hot and sweaty after running, he jumped in that river, and he immediately just cramped up, got in the swirling waters, got in the potholes, got in the stumps, got in the brushes. I had not known any of this. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening. My phone rang. My dad answered the phone. He said, no, I don't know anything about this. I'll find out. My dad had worked for the state police, and so the person on the other end of the phone said, we heard that Roger had drowned. We heard Roger drowned. Is it true? Is it true? He said, I'll find out. So he called the state police post, and he did find out that indeed Roger, my best friend, had jumped in seeking coolness, seeking relief, seeking good things. But it was not to be, for Satan was there all along, making the horrible river of death look like good. And I lost my best friend. Oh, how I've thought of him many, many times, and I've thought about that river of death. And mark my words, since that day I was ever so vigilant. I was ever so careful anytime I was around that river of death. Satan himself had used the attractiveness of that river to tempt that young man. And now here he was, dead. Satan, folks, uses many tools to tempt us as sons and daughters. I ask you this morning, has he tempted you? Are you in a river this morning? Maybe you think you're in a place of refreshing. Maybe you think you're in a place of coolness. Maybe the place you are right now feels comfortable to you, nice to you. And then all of a sudden, perhaps tomorrow, the struggle will begin, and you'll find out that Satan has his hands on you. Can you imagine every son that is born, every son thrown into that river? Can you imagine what those babies, as they were flailed out into that water, that young child flailing as best as could, not understanding, what is this that's encompassing me? Why can't I breathe? What is this coldness? The baby's thrown into the river of death. But oh, I thank the Lord for a river of life. The river we read about in Revelation chapter 2. Turn over there again. Revelation chapter 22. I want to focus not on the river of death this morning, but a river of life this morning. That death is but a warning. And he showed me a pure river. Not a river that has mud in it. Not a river that has dead fish in it. Not a river that has tin